Hey gang, welcome to the new episode of In Love with the Process. I am your host, Mike Pecci. This episode is a really exciting one for me because I actually get to sit down and have a conversation with one of my favorite illustrators and graphic designers, this dude called Ash Thorp. I don't know if you've seen his stuff yet, but before the episode begins, take a moment and run over to his website. It's ashthorp.com. You can take a look at all of the really cool projects that he's worked on. He's done graphic design work for like major motion pictures like the new Total Recall. He did all of the, I think he did all the CG advertisements in the Ghost in the Shell movie. And then he's done some amazing personal projects. He actually did a super cool fan Ghost in the Shell short film. And this isn't even a short film. He actually just shot for shot did the opening credits for the animated feature, and he did them CG and shot a bunch of stuff with it. And if you go to his website, he actually has it laid out where you can see his process, see like the concept work, and see it all come together. He has great behind the scenes videos, super talented guy, and a dude that hopefully I get to work with. So one of the reasons why I love doing the show is I get to talk to people and sort of find out if they're super cool in real life. So sit back, relax, enjoy the new episode. Hey Ash, welcome to my show. Welcome to the new episode of In Love with the Process. I'm really excited to have you on the show. I've been a fan of your stuff for actually a few years now. Quietly internet stalking, I think is a polite way of saying it. But awesome. Yeah, thanks for being on, man.
Thank you for reaching out. You know, I really appreciate it. It's very, I don't know. It's always I'm a bit shy with this stuff, so I appreciate it. So thank you. Yeah, it doesn't make sense because I do these, you know, but it's like weird for me to be interviewed. Yeah, to be on the other side is always like, oh, okay, nice. Yeah.
It's unfortunately it's the beast these days. Like you have to be a bit of a personality. As well as being, you know, a talent as far as directing or anything else is concerned. So
it's a noisy world right now, that's for sure.
Oh man, yeah. Unreal. So, yeah. So for the audience that may not know who you are, so you have been a really great illustrator, graphic designer. You also direct commercials and short films at this point, right? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. You know, honestly, there's so many, I'm just really curious about everything. And, I try not to wear like any main titles. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm a designer. And then I try to just kind of do it all. Whatever I'm interested in, that's just what I do. So, I've done everything from illustrations to, design to working on feature films to working on AAA games to pretty much everything. And I think what's really kept me inspired and going is just constantly being curious about the process of everything, at the same time finding my own process, and then through that infusing as much of my taste and my own opinions on things as much into the work. And that kind of defines my style, which I'm constantly working at basically. And it's like a summation and a culmination of all those things. So, and I'm currently completely obsessed with like cameras and cinematography, and I'm tying that into the CGI work that I do. So it's all encompassing, and I guess I would just consider myself more or less a hybrid creative. So, or just a creative person in general. So, yeah.
Well, let's give it a little backstory. When did you decide that you wanted to get into this? Was there some sort of thing that happened to you when you were a kid? Did you see something that inspired you? Did you pick up a pencil? Like, where did it start?
I came from a very creative family. My mom is still an artist, and she was an artist then, and she was always drawing and very supportive of my art forms and just doing illustrations and all that kind of stuff. Because I grew up very poor, so it was like you could afford a pen and paper and a box to draw in, basically. So I've been drawing and doing this stuff since forever. Obviously, touchstone films such as like, you know, Jurassic Park and you know, for me it was like The Labyrinth, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the original Star Wars, you know, like all those kind of classic films that really, you know, the original Alien. I mean, there's, you know, original Blade Runner. I got into Blade Runner later on in life, but I mean, there's the catalyst. There isn't just one thing. It was all of those things. You know, I recently listened to a documentary on Leonardo da Vinci, the audiobook, and it was just fascinating. And the thing I really loved about something I felt somewhat similar to him. Not that I'm saying, I mean, even in the same realm of him, but is that he was very curious about all these things, and he had a very like inquisitive nature about just all the things. And I think it just kind of comes from your spirit within at a very early age. I was just thankful to be in a family that supported my inquisitive nature of all things math, science, engineering, everything. Basically, it's all just all encompassed. So yeah, I can't really say one thing. You know, I was like, I could say it was the time I saw Akira, but then I was drawing before then. I could say it was Todd McFarlane's comics, but it was before him. It was like, there's so many things that like summarize, you know, or get me to that spot, you know? So yeah.
Well, it's very refreshing to hear that, you know, you had a very supportive upbringing and that it was a very creative environment. I too was very fortunate with that. You know, I grew up as the oldest of four. And, you know, I learned pretty early on from my dad, who is actually in finance, but he loved to be an artist on the side, that, you know, if you wanted to win a Halloween costume event as a kid, it's better to make the costume than it is to go out and buy one. And, you know, if we'd put on like, you know, family pageants for Christmas as a gift for my mother. So we'd actually act out like,
that's amazing.
Like really cheesy, you know, cartoons as kids. There are videotapes of this that I swear to God, are going to get leaked at some point.
That's amazing. That's so great. I mean, that's awesome. You know, you can't put a price on that kind of stuff, you know?
No, it's very true that like, you know, if you decide, I mean, I don't have any kids yet, but if I decide to have kids, I just want to make sure that I pass that along as well, because there's so much negativity out today, and a lot of people that are unfortunate, and they do come from really bad situations, and out of that, it doesn't mean that you have to come from like a really good family background to be creative. I've met some amazing artists that come from a tougher background, and they actually use that and use a creative outlet to express that. So it's just really nice to hear that there is other folks out there that do come from like a good back history, like good creative back history. You know what I mean? It
just really helps. You know, I think if you don't have it, it's just another hurdle for you to have to go through. If you're a very passionate person, no matter who you are, you're going to eventually run into loopholes or pitfalls, or, you know, whatever it might be, depression or the quote unquote artist block and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to get through that crap when you have a supportive circle. But I do know that if it's too supportive, it actually hinders the art form as well. So it's a nice balance between being supportive, but at the same time being realistic. So it's I think it, you know, because if everybody just tells you your art's great, you're never going to grow. I think, you know, you need that like shake of reality, you know, which is good and it's also bad too. It depends on where it comes from, obviously, and how you take it. But isn't it interesting that we're repeating our habits from when we were a kid? Because if you're making films and stuff and you're doing that, I mean, it's like it's one and the same, and it has the soul of it, you know. And we're just repeating those habits over and over. I just always get fascinated by it because it's just like, what the hell? It's so crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
constantly going over it.
I mean, it's so interesting that, you know, when you're at those real formative years, you know, and you're talking about like preteens and late adolescence kind of stuff, and you have like these really strong reactions, at least as a director, I know that I'm constantly trying to recreate a feeling that I got at that age, you know, like at 8 years old when I watched the first Nightmare on Elm Street, and how much that actually scared me. And then the longer we work in this business and the longer it's like learning the magician's trick. So it becomes a lot harder to be scared that same way. And I find that when I'm making movies, I'm trying to set up the same sort of environment that scared me when I was 8 years old, so that I can be scared for a minute again. You know what I mean?
Spielberg's the master of that. He really is. And I think he's still a child at heart. And he's one of those guys that somehow managed to really figure out a way of being an adult, but being a child at the same time. So he's like a modern day Peter Pan, really, you know, if you think about it.
Yeah, man.
It's just like the way because you feel it in his work, even to this day. Like I watched Tintin as probably one of his last, like, I didn't watch his Ready Player One yet, but like Tintin had so much like childlike, funny euphemisms and energy to it. It's just like, it's so great. And even think about how old he was when he made like even Goonies, or like, even Jurassic Park has tons of like, childlike humor to it. So, but yeah, it is hard. It is hard because it is so easy to become jaded in this industry because it'll just grind you down. It's it's a marathon, not a sprint. So
it's very much so a marathon, man. And I constantly find myself trying to stay connected to that. There was a short period of time when I was, earlier on in the business, when I was hanging out with a bunch of film nerds that were all my age, and we would all sit around and you'd start to talk about like who's a real director and what is the best movie. And it really started to become over analytical. And I actually found myself at a certain point going, fuck, I'm not actually having fun with this anymore. Like this is way too judgmental. Like we need to get back to what the root of all this is. And for me as a director, I obviously am telling stories that I believe in and telling stories that affect me, but ultimately I'm making movies for an audience. And I really get off on either scaring an audience or, having them sort of hit all the cues that I've set up, and really just sort of making it an experience, the same experience that I had once again back when I was 8 years old and saw Nightmare on Elm Street. Or like I posted recently on my Instagram, I think one of my favorite movies of all time, it's funny, one of my favorite movies of all time is Godzilla 1985.
I don't even think I've seen it.
Oh, it's so good, dude. It happens in like 1980s Japan. So it has sort of like that dark, it's not quite neo-noir, but it's almost like slightly Akira, sort of Japan. And they built this rad miniatures, and they started to do like animatronics with the actual suit. It's really dark. And
1985?
Yeah. If the actual Japanese release was 1984, and then they took them a year to get it over here to the US. And of course they had to put Raymond Burr back in it. And of course they had to have like a whole American subplot that was never in the Japanese one. But that's the one I saw first, the super cheesy American one. And I fell fucking in love with it. And that movie influences me, like the way they light the city, the way they light the miniatures. The music is phenomenal in that movie. Super rad.
Isn't that interesting though about making art is how much of it is based on influence, like art is from my perspective, it's the more you consume and the more like raw you consume things, the better your art is almost, because it's like you're taking in so much information and so much of what you take in. But the real sketchy thing is like when to take it in and how to find it, right? And as a kid, I think that's why things are so less, like I just watched Hereditary the other day and I was really expecting it to be a special thing for me, but it wasn't at all. And I was like, damn it, like I wanted it to be this like thing. And I know I'm not bashing it at all. I have my own opinion. If it's different from other people, don't get mad at me. But
you know what? I'm going to put my neck out in the line here and agree with you completely, because right now everybody, I was out in LA for the week, and everybody out there is, literally jacking off to that movie, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool.
You mean Rosemary, the Hereditary baby?
Yeah, exactly. There it is. I almost did a post the other day going, check out the new trailer, and just posted the Rosemary's Baby trailer.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, you get influences from everything. And I feel like I don't want to insult the filmmaker and the people that made it, because I don't know it. And then they're way ahead of me, because I haven't made a feature film and I haven't made something nearly as big or as crazy as that. So I really don't have a place to stand and have an opinion, to be completely honest. I have my own opinion as a consumer, but I don't have like a legitimate opinion, if you know what I mean, like to be fair enough to them. But at the same time, it's either a film does something for you or it doesn't. And, you go to these experiences, it's quite an archaic experience thing. If you can think about it, we sit in a dark room with a bunch of strangers and we watch this thing, and if it's done really well, it'll excite you or make you sad or make you feel a certain way or take you back to a certain memory. And if it's not done well, it's just going to make you feel really angry and upset, So, but I don't know. I'm still processing this every day. Like, what am I thinking right now? Why am I watching this? Why is this framed like this? Like every question imaginable. Where's the light coming from? Well, what lens is that? Okay, well, why is that there? And that's an interesting part of dialogue. Or that scene could have been acted better. They wish they did another take of that, or wonder how they did that one thing. So it's like, I think you just mentioned it too, like how you would decipher these things with your friends and it removed the magic. It's, of course it does, because when you're sitting there watching magic being taking place, you just sit there and experience the magic, and then your mind shuts off and just lets it be.
Yep.
When you try to analyze the magic, it removes that and brings the logical sense in, and then it kind of removes you from the actual art form itself and depletes all excitement usually. It's just really funny.
Yeah, no, it's because you have to analyze things. And for me, I end up going through, at least now, what I try to do is I try to take note of all the things that impress me, whether it is the way they covered a scene or whether it is, visually what that lens choice is saying about the character. And I just sort of lock these things away and I put them in sort of my toolbox. And oftentimes that's the place that I go when I'm prepping a movie. So like if I'm going through a script and I like to storyboard everything myself. So like if I'm going through and starting there, that is the most creative part for me, is like when you're sitting down to do that storyboard process, because there are no fucking rules yet, you know? And at that point, that's when I usually reach into that toolbox. Like if I'm reading in the script that a character does something specific and I want the audience to empathize with that, I go, oh, okay, well, right. Remember when they did this in this movie? That was really great. And they used that lens thing. Okay. I'm not going to rip that off, but understanding what that reaction was, maybe I'll use something similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And you can, I think you just mentioned it too, which I think is really interesting and very important to remember too. And from lots of artists, maybe even starting out earlier, is there's an ethical issue and you just blatantly rip things off. It's like one thing to take, but it's another thing to rob, So it's so hard, right? It's so hard to find that ground. And I think for creatives in our place and time, when people have made so many great pieces of work prior, the art form itself is, like you just went to Hollywood, they're looking for the next thing, they're constantly mining for it. And it's like, we haven't had I don't know, maybe we have, and I've dismissed it, or I'm just jaded about it. But like the last big, smasher was like The Matrix, I think, or maybe Inception or something, like Hollywood smash, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But not trying to say hasn't been great films, because there's been amazing films. Some of my favorite films have come out as of recent, like, There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men. Those films are outstanding. They're in my top 5, top 10, really.
Yeah.
I'm just, saying, the mega smashers, they're like, what I'm getting at is a lot of it's hard to make. Art is hard and originality is hard, but there's no such thing, in my opinion, as originality, because it's all culmination. It's how you mix the recipes. It's like Mexican food, Mexican food is basically all the same ingredients if you think about it. So let's decipher it. A taco, somebody says one's a taco and somebody says the other one's a burrito. Sure, they're different things, and it's good that you've categorized them, but they're basically the same thing. They have like a tortilla, one's made out of corn, one's made out of flour, but they're usually containing the same ingredients. You have a meat, you have a cheese, and you have like a bean or something, And for the most part, it's the same thing. Oh, it's a tostada. Oh, it's nachos. It's like, okay, well, the nachos are just corn tortillas, but they're fried, and then you put the same stuff on top of it this time. So it's like, and you could do that with all food groups, all types of food, they really kind of break down into, they transition into different things, so it's the ingredients and how you combine them. I think that's the trick. I usually relate things to food in my mind. So, cause it's so commonplace and so easy, so.
Well, you and I do the same thing. I always end up back at food on this podcast. It always goes that way.
Good. I love food.
You know what?
Food forever.
For me, and I've said this before, for me, cooking is, filmmaking, like directing is such a long con. Like it's this long process where like you have to come up with a really great idea. You beat yourself up. You're processing that idea. If you're working with a writer, you both are sort of trudging through this to try to make it the best it possibly can be, sealing up any potential holes that could show up. And then there it is in its glory on a script page, on a page, done. And then you have to go through the process of convincing somebody to back you, and convincing somebody to support this thing. And then if you're fortunate enough to do that, there are going to be alterations and changes that happen in order to placate the folks that need that, because it is a commerce game and you have to figure all that kind of stuff out. And then you go through this process of casting, and then you go to the crew and all the way through. And so it's like a 2-year at least.
Sometimes 10.
Yeah. I
watched Gavin go through the Ender's Game process. It took him about 10 years to get Ender's Game all the way through.
Dude.
It's like, kill me now. And it was a gnarly process for him. He bled for that the whole time. I was like, dude, so gnarly. Yeah. But war of attrition. Yeah.
And I always come back to food, because food does the same. For me, cooking a good meal, and I love cooking for people. For me, cooking a good meal is like directing. And if if you have a big meal and you have a couple people working with you in the kitchen, you're sort of directing them on what to do, like cut up the, do this and cut up the onions and do all that kind of stuff. But then you get to deliver a sense, like a sensory story, like a story that uses all your senses. And you get the payoff in like
a lot faster. They're very fast. It's usually, an hour, 2 hours. And then you get that. But I think the long con is a great way to look at it. At the same time, it's such a marathon. It's an art form. I think there's a couple art forms that have been trumping me since my creation, and one of them is comics. I always want to be a comic book artist, and I just had the hardest time being a comic book artist. And also the whole industry and everything has shifted. It's not like I can't stop everything I'm doing and go be a comic book artist. I could do it if I really wanted to. It's just like I would have to change so much about my lifestyle and my family in order to make that switch happen. I just don't feel it would be fair to them for me to fulfill one of my childhood, worshiping secrets. But the other one is filmmaking. Filmmaking, I feel, is another one of those. Like, I do stuff in CGI, and when you do stuff in computer, it's difficult. It definitely has its own issues, but it's so different from the dynamics that you get when you're just saying, hey, okay, action. And then you're like, well, that sucks. And you're like, okay, try it again. And then you get it, and it's like you have this feeling, right? It's like almost like before you've ever tasted cilantro, there's this kind of like this weird, interesting vegetable that like accelerates taste. And you're like, but you don't know which one it is until like you go to the grocery store and try every fucking thing, and then you go, oh, here's the cilantro, and there's nothing like cilantro, So yeah, it's a very, I'm working on my next short. I have 2 right now. I don't know if you're the same way, but I do 2 projects at once, passion projects at once, if not 3 or 4, but I do them because I like to tandem bounce. I'm definitely, I think maybe more or less aligned with I think Ridley Scott does the same thing, but one of my best friends, Anthony Scott Burns, he's an incredible talent. He's one of my mentors in film. He can only do one at the same time because I really admire him because he just focuses on that one thing. But for me, I go like, hey, my brain's exhausted on this one. I've tried to put all this effort in. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to release that. I'm going to go to this one. And by the time I come back, I usually have a lot of energy in rethinking, restructuring. And then I go, okay. So, but I just kind of had like I hate myself moment last week. So he helped me out. So I know you probably go through those too, because you're just like, this sucks. I suck. This isn't going to work. It's not as good as it needs to be. It needs to be better.
Dude. I mean, I sent you my two shorts, right? I sent you both those. The second one, which I haven't released the title of yet, that's why I'm not putting it, but the one that happens at Christmas time.
Yes.
That one we did after we went out to Hollywood with the first 12KM. That one, we actually went out and pitched to a bunch of different production companies. And once we get off the air here, I can tell you who we're going with. It's pretty
awesome.
rad.
Very cool, man.
Yeah, it's pretty rad, dude. So when we went out there and did that, we had pitched to a bunch of different companies that I was really fucking bummed out that we didn't get in with, and they passed on. And I was really fucking bummed out about it. And I was like, God damn it. I've always wanted to work for those guys.
Yeah.
I sort of had this down sort of period on it. And what I did is I just talked to them, and I was like, okay, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Like, what are you guys looking for? Like, what kind of genres are you looking for? That kind of stuff. And then I came back home and I hooked up with my writer, Will Simmons, and we did an exercise. We said, okay, look, we'll give ourselves a couple of days and let's work within these parameters and see something will work, something clicks, something that we want to tell a story of, and we did. We found something that was really rad, and it was like a great inspirational moment for us where it was like, we got this idea, great, boom, write it down, boom, awesome. I'll film it next month. I'll edit it. So this was something that we conceived in December, and I had shot by March.
Awesome. It's just, I think what I've realized is the thing that I've learned from this process so far, and I could be completely wrong, but it's just kind of how I work, is I try to control it as much as I can by doing everything as possible, like shooting it, casting it, writing it, everything, because I'm a bit of a control freak, and I'm okay with understanding that until I can hire people that are better than me, which there's tons of people I'm sure that are much better than I am. This is my newbie ass at this stuff. But the one thing is I found that my favorite part of making these things is just like the times and the good times that you have with the people that you make them with, and choosing to do them with the right people and having a good time, because you really can't control those other things. Like you can't control the popularity contest at Warner Brothers or whatever it might be, or Amblin or whatever. You can't read those people's minds. You can just make the thing that you can. And if you're being genuine in your form of communication with your films, if it registers with them, it does. If it doesn't, then it's just like, well, it's just not made to be. And it's like dealing with that. I think like when Anthony and I were talking about it, and he was like, all my life I wanted to be David Fincher, but he's like, I'm realizing I'm more like John Carpenter. And I was like, yeah, maybe I'm more like a weirdo Terrence Malick Lynch, and I gotta just deal with that. Like as much as I watch these other guys killing it, as much as I wish I could be a Spielberg, I could probably mimic him, but I wouldn't be honest to myself. I think that you have to make. And it's kind of weird with this art form. I think it kind of just reveals itself to you. Like I'm a big fan of, say, like, I'm looking at his art now and I'm blanking on what the hell. Mignola's work. He does all the art for Hellboy.
Yep.
I can mimic his art style. Sure. Anybody I think that puts the time to can mimic somebody. They could be a photocopier. There's a lot of those, but when I start drawing, and I'm really just drawing for me, it like doesn't look anything like his, Yeah. And I get depressed and I go, fuck, I suck. I'm not like as good as him. And then I realize after drawing like my own style for months and months and months, I start to iron it out and go, you know what? I kind of like my own style, and it's okay to have your own style. And it's just a part of the metamorphosis. And I think it's because I'm still very new to making films. I'm just in that really like fucking fetus state where I'm just like, I suck.
It sucks.
And it's also because I'm doing it on my own, like mostly, not all of it, but
that's good though. That's good. Mm. That's good that you're doing it on your own. And that's one thing, because I'm out in Boston, man, and that's where I live. And this is where I do most of my stuff. And I went to school in New York, and I was, after school, I was faced with that. Do I stay? Do I not? Do I go home? What do I do? And I ended up coming back into this city because I knew with my resources, I could make stuff so much bigger than if I had such a high overhead. And, for quite some time, when you're doing the long, slow 8 years, 9 year plus fucking rise before anybody gives a shit about you, you're
that's how long it takes 2 kids.
Yeah, totally, dude. And then you're questioning. You're like, fuck, did I make the wrong call? Should I have been in New York? Should I have moved to Los Angeles? But you know what, dude? Because I have been out of the system, it sounds like you've been out of the system as well. I end up coming up with really strange ways of doing things because they're not telling me how to do things.
Exactly. That's important, man. Yeah. It's important to be away from the hub. I honestly 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Because then in the way through the back door, you're developing a style. And to sort of talk about your statement on style, I don't think I think style is completely developed based upon your environment. And I think that it is how you roll with the fucking punches. And especially with filmmaking. With filmmaking, it's all about compromise. And you're literally just choosing. It's like people are showing up with trays and they're like, what do you prefer? It's like, put the broccoli on, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. I mean, that's directing, is choosing things. And it took me the longest time because people started to say I had a sense of style with my photography and with my work. And they would go, oh, I recognized your work. And I saw you work on that magazine cover and that was definitely you. And I got irritated. I was like, fuck, you guys can recognize my work and my name's not even on it. So I'm going to switch it all up. I'm going to fucking change it up. And I went through this meticulous process of being like, I'm not going to shoot it the way I did. I'm going to choose different lenses. I'm going to choose different lights, different colors. And I put it out and they go, oh yeah, we saw you on that magazine. It's your work again. And I'm like, all right, I give up.
That's a good thing. Honestly, that's good because if you didn't, you'd be hunting for it. And then that'd be the scarier thing. And I think I see that a lot more than the other side of it, where people don't have a style or they're aping another person's style. And then they're just they just are they're just not, they haven't found it. So it's good that you have a style and that you found it. I love Boston too, by the way. I used to live in Waltham. I love it over there. It's so cool.
Oh, cool.
It has such a feel. Boston has such a unique feel. I love that city. It's like the Massachusetts in general it's very cinematic in a weird way. Especially because you guys have all that seasons. Like I love Southern California. That's where I live, but
yeah, we
don't get any of that shit. It's great to live, but we don't get that like hotness, like that madness, So the crazy fucking kill me now cold and then like the fucking crazy kill me now humidity, which I'm sure you're sitting in right now. So yeah.
Very true, man.
Awesome to shoot in, not the best to live in. So yeah.
No, it's a wonderful place and it's still a great place to make movies. I mean, they have a really great tax incentive here, which is awesome, especially if you start to get into like the bigger budget stuff. But it's a cool place because people are still enchanted by it. So I can walk into, when I was researching 12KM, I literally called a power plant in fucking Salem and they were like, come on down. And they gave me
awesome.
They gave me the keys to the fucking castle.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I got to walk through this fucking power plant and the only stipulation, she's like, look, I'll give you a tour guide and I'll have him walk you through this whole place, but I need one thing. And I was like, okay, expecting like to cut my kidney out and hand it to her. And she's like, I want to sit down with you and give you my advice on the script.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, and you're just like, sure, you can do whatever you want. Like,
sure.
Give me the location. I don't give a shit. Like,
well, and I also like good feedback. She had a couple good points that I was like, oh, okay, that's how you process this character. Do I want you to? I don't know. Let me think about that. But
yeah, that's cool.
But fuck yeah, man. I mean, it's one of the reasons why
it doesn't hurt to ask. I think that's really the key too. And that's so much of what directing is like putting yourself in an uncomfortable. I'm quite a shy person, and I don't like to create a scene. I've tried to avoid it. Like when I'm out shooting, like I hate the feeling sometimes, like, oh fuck, people are looking at me. I hate it, but I just have to do it. I was out with like my gimbal and like I had my camera and I was like, I had my monitor and I was doing a bunch of weird test stuff because I'm combining CGI and I had my HDRI 360 camera on and I just had all this shit and I'm walking around my park next to my house. People are just like, what the hell? I just hate that feeling. I just like, stop looking at me. It's like a weird issue I have, I guess.
You can't have it when you're directing, my friend.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying with the directing. There's so many, for me at least, there's so many things that help me be better because it makes me evolve past my comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, I think it's another thing that I'm learning that lesson is Woody Allen films the way Woody Allen films. David Fincher films the way David Fincher films. Everybody has their own lenses. Scorsese has his own lens. I think it's the thing I'm realizing is it's such a big art form, but you realize that when you do it more and more, you go, okay, well, I'm just this kind of person. I'm just, as much as I want to try and be this other one, if I'm being genuine to myself, I'm this person, So, and being okay with that, I think is really the key, which is really difficult, because it's like, if you do have your own style, which is great, the real fucking shit of that is that, like, you're not an easy sell, Like Anthony and I, we made this Lost Boy film and we went out and did the whole Hollywood walkthrough and all that kind of stuff. And like, for the most part, I mean, people are like, that's cool. I dig it. It's got like some interesting things. We're like, tell us the bigger story. And we have a much bigger story that involves. And they were like, that's fucking insane. That's really cool. And they're like, honestly, it's so like unique and different that we can't even figure out how to sell that. So we can't do it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, you guys say you want something new, but you're not willing to take the risk to make something new. So yeah, I mean, it's all part of the fucking process, you know? So
yeah, man, it's very true, dude. And then my experience, I try to, when I started doing music videos, you know, and music videos, generally music videos are like you get like a treatment or you get an idea from a band and you're sort of restricted by like either performance or some sort of idea, and you're sort of playing within the restrictions that they've given you. And a lot of times the main restriction is usually budget and time. It's like these two big things. And so for years, my business partner, Ian McFarlane, and I played in that playground, which was how do we do the best that we can possibly do under these restrictions? And how do we make it seem like it cost $1 million to do this video that, you know, the budget was probably like $5,000 on, you know? Yeah. So how do I do that? And we came up with a lot of really good shit in there. And it was like boot camp, really. It's sort of like, it's a comfort zone for me. Like the alternative is actually a little bit more scary. If someone came to me and said, "Okay, you got $165 million, you can do whatever the fuck you want," I think I would be a lot more scared at that point because there aren't those restrictions. Really, you know? Yeah.
And I don't think the average person or I don't think it's good for that, because if you have if you have too much power, I think it's not. I think the great art forms really come from the you know, compromise, or like Ridley Scott, for example, like when he went off and when he started doing Alien, he got everything and they said, okay, we'll give you $4 million. We're going to make a B rate level like horror film. And he's like, well, I'm not going to make a B level. So give me a couple months. And he storyboarded everything out, showed them everything, showed them the artist, everything. And they bought into it and they doubled the budget. And I think by having those things, I mean, if they were like, here's like $80 million to make Alien or whatever it might be, if it was an ample amount of money and he didn't do that, it probably wouldn't be the same great film. You know, I really firmly believe that. I think that's what I think is kind of, I know I'm being a bitch about this, but I think it's a really hard part of the process of being a director or directing or making your own content, is that you've agreed to live a life of torture. You really have, and you have to bleed for it. And you have to be willing to be uncomfortable for years and years to get to, you know, a final position. And I remember listening to I listened to a lot of director commentary too. And David Fincher had it really well, where he was talking about, I think it was like Fight Club commentary. And he was saying, like, you know, a film is like a multi-layered thing. And you know, like you just mentioned it earlier, you go through the creative process and the scripting and all that kind of stuff. And then you break all those things down, and then you go through and making the film itself, and you do shooting and you capture all the stuff. And then the film changes in the editing room, and then you do sound and all that kind of stuff. And you have all these layers, and then you go through reviews and screenings, and then you have to adjust things from there. And then the next step is you have to go out and then release the film. And then it becomes somebody else's at that point, and it's not even yours anymore. And it's like, all these, and I remember listening to that, it really shook me, because I was like, damn, it's so true. There's so many layers to it. Yeah. But it's like, it's such an enigma. I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's like the ultimate enigma for me in the creative space. I mean, you could sit there and design something, and it's so funny how small a design could feel in comparison to the magnitude of making a film, you know, like,
dude, as soon as, I mean, I always say this, it's like being a painter, but imagine that you have to walk over to every one of your paintbrushes before you get started and go, how was your night? How's your wife? Like, did you sleep well today? Here, have some coffee. You know, let's get started. And then,
are you feeling red today? Are you feeling red? Are you feeling blue? What are you going to give me today? Well, I need red here because I'm making a sunset. Do not give me fucking blue because it's not nighttime.
For sure, man. For sure. It's a wild.
It's a people sport. That's for sure too. It's all about communication too.
I fucking love it, man. I really do. Like, I learned.
Sounds like you really enjoy it.
Oh man, I love hanging out with folks, you know, and I think
same.
I think that's the thing. I've worked for a lot of dictators. I've heard war stories from crew people that have worked for dictators. I just don't get it. I don't understand the whole notion of like, I need to be an asshole in order to pull this stuff off. For me, it's the complete opposite. And I really enjoy collaborating, and I enjoy the surprise that I get from folks. And I've said this story before, but you might find it interesting. When I was younger, I went to school, and we were trained on black and white 60 millimeter silent filmmaking, and we cut on Steenbeck. We actually did all that, so it taught me really early on how to plan for the edit, and since you're shooting film, how to be really smart about your shots and be efficient. So what I did is I did what I do. I storyboarded my shit, and it was like a huge Hitchcock sort of influence for my final thesis. And I storyboarded the whole fucking thing out, and then I went and I shot it exactly the way all the storyboards were. I had people move exactly the way they were on all the boards. And I got into the edit room, and we had this giant basement with all these different Steenbecks set up. It was probably like 15, 16 different Steenbecks, and everybody's in there cramming away, and you would sign up for shifts, and you'd be in there for like, 32 hours straight,
Sure.
until you can't sleep anymore. And I sat down, took my film, cut it. I had it done in a day. It was just like boom, 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 finished. And I'm in the edit room, and I have it booked out for a few days. So I'm hanging out in the other room with my friends, and I'm watching their discovery. I'm watching some of these guys that came from a completely different discipline where they hadn't storyboarded it out, and they went through this long process of like figuring it out on set and doing all this stuff. And it was so much fun. It was so much fun to watch them discover their film in the edit room. And I was fucking envious because I had done it, which I thought was the correct way, which I thought was the right way to do it, which ended up being so really boring to me. And that really changed me at that moment, changed the way I direct, because I like a combo of them both. I believe in being prepared just in case you and I show up and we had a night of hard drinking the night before and way too much food. And I'm just like, just follow the boards, and we'll get through this. Just follow the boards.
Sure.
But
to have coverage. Yeah.
But then you as you're doing it, you have to be aware on set. You have to be clear of mind on set and just sort of understand like, oh shit, okay, because of what I'm dealt here, that doesn't work. Let me reach into that toolbox that we were talking about earlier. Okay, what can I do with what I have here? And that's when it gets really fucking exciting. Or if a performer or an actor improvises, or they just move a certain, like on the last movie I did, the actress walked down that hallway, looked in the bedroom, and performed a certain way. And that at that moment, that literally changed my next 12 shots. I threw all the coverage out the window and completely changed it because of the surprise that she gave me. So yeah, I love that shit, man. That's all the bullshit that we go through. Like that, oh yeah, man. Yeah. It's the best.
I think that's true because I just ran into that same problem. I boarded everything out. I went out and shot it directly as I thought. And I started putting it together and I was like, this sucks. It's dry as balls here. Like it just sucks, and I was like wondering, well, what is it that's not working? And I think Anthony and I had a really great talk. He's such a great mentor. And he was like, well, you have to make sure that from his standpoint, and I completely agree. And I think it really connects with all the films that I love is with filmmaking is you ask a question, or you want your audience to ask a question. And right off the bat, you put them in the weird question zone and then you hold that question, you hold it. And then you release the answer. And you better fucking hope that you've done a good enough job that the answer equals the time that was spent with the question that was offered in the beginning. And that is if you have that figured out, you have a formula that works inside a film, I think. And he was right. And I broke down, I looked at what I had and I was like, okay, what I had was good. It was just very direct and literal, but it was going to work. But it was just, I wasn't posing a question. And with him, I've been rethinking about the whole tool and mechanism. And it's like, yeah, it's like, fuck, I got to go back and ask the question. And then I need to have the answer that fulfills it enough that makes sense, and I've been studying films like The Blair Witch and shit, which is quite genius, I think, in many aspects. And like how they captured that kind of stuff with such a low production. Because, when you're doing this by yourself or on minimal, I'm doing all kinds of different stuff at the same time, client work and stuff. And I'm just fitting this in like the little bit of time that I do have.
I understand.
But it's, how it is. It's like in the beginning, especially like you have to take so many risks on your own, but It's just a part of the process, obviously. And that process is just something that you have to go through. And it's just, I think it's like I have so much appreciation. Even like we were talking about Hereditary, for example, like that director, that creative had to go through probably a lot of the same stuff that we're going through, if not more, obviously.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of respect, even if I don't connect with it and I have my own issues with it. It's like, I have a lot of respect no matter what for any film that's made it out, because it's like, I know how difficult it is to actually make anything.
It's a fucking miracle. You know, like if you watch
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. If you watch a shitty movie, it's a miracle that got made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it's crazy.
There's so many elements, man, all the way from the prep to like just the set days. And I find that whenever I'm doing a movie and I'm producing it at the same time, which I do a lot of when I'm doing the short stuff that I do, it's a nightmare, because most of the time, at any waking, as soon as you wake up, at any moment of that day, someone's coming to pull the plug. Any moment of that day. And you're just fighting and fighting and fighting to keep it going, keep it running, have that thing happening. And I feel like the only moment of peace that I have on a film that I'm producing is when I call action. Because when I call action, everybody shuts the fuck up. And I get to sit there and watch the movie. And for like that beautiful amount of time, it's quiet. And then I get to see it. I get to see everything. And as soon as you call cut, people come over and go, the locations guy's pissed off, and and it just starts to swarm you again. So it's
little pockets of solitude. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's cool. It's definitely the feeling I get as well. And that's why I probably try to just contain it all as much as I can internally and keep it. I mean, Anthony, I talk a lot about this. It's like Stanley Kubrick shot most of his stuff. I mean, whether you think so or not, I mean, you just see photos of him. He's just there with his actors and the sound guy, really, he was cameraman. And that intimacy I find to me is so special. And that's how I like to work personally as well. I don't like to have all the noise. It's just a part of it. I think it's just coming to terms that I'm not a Michael Bay guy. Maybe I am. I don't know it. What if like that's who I become? And I probably could, I guess, but I mean, I think it's just finding those things, and those moments of solitude is what I really enjoy. But I also just love, like, I'm doing a shoot tomorrow to kind of reinvigorate my muse. I'm creating the creature basically for this short horror film that I'm working on.
Cool.
And my friend's coming over, and she's awesome, and she's just like fucking super down to just get the work done. And there's like zero drama, which is the best. And we're just going to shoot all day. I'm going to do stills and footage, and I'm just going to like shoot whatever and play until I can find what it is. And then I'm going to get re-inspired from that and then go from there, and just take it as we go. And then it'll kind of evolve as I'm asking the question. And then once I have the main pillar, it'll evolve into its next thing. So, but it's just it's a real wild thing. I don't know. It's just crazy. It's a really crazy process. It's cool that we're doing this podcast now, because I really hope that I accelerate and actually become somewhat of a decent filmmaker. And this will be like a time capsule to look back of how horrible I was. So,
oh man, come on. Like you're always going to be learning, dude. And if you're not,
of course.
If you're not, it's going to get stale. So like,
I would stop doing it if I wasn't learning.
Yeah, man. And I find that I love experience. I mean, I've been directing now for about 18 years, and I love having that experience behind me. And I love the tricks that I developed on my own, like you're talking about. The shit that you figure out with just you and a camera. When I'm with a 40-person crew, and shit goes down, I usually fall back on those things that I developed when it was just me and a camera. That always fucking happens.
It's great. But it's good to have that.
Yeah.
It's just ammo.
Yeah. But I mean, I want to be scared. Like I work really well when I'm scared. I work really well when someone challenges me and they say, I don't know how you're going to pull this off, and it's like, oh no, we could fucking do that. Like the planning I'm doing for the feature version of 12 Cam right now is insane. And actually sitting there, I was talking to our line producer, and they're putting together a budget for this thing. And she says to me, like, how is the derricks going to work? And the derricks is actually the place where they drill into the ground, they drop the pipes and all that stuff. And I go, I don't know yet. And she's like, how big do you want the set to be? And I'm like, oh man, I don't know yet. You know what I mean? It's like a bunch of this stuff where I'm like, I gotta think about it. We gotta figure this stuff out. Okay, is now the time to start figuring? Is it like go time yet? Now, because there's this other part of me as a director where I don't want to get too excited. I don't want to start to get too deep into prep on something that isn't 100% a go, because then I feel like you're just blowing those ideas, and you're blowing that like really, I don't know, maybe it's the young director in me. You're blowing that emotional high that you get from coming up with really great problem solving ideas if you're just doing it way too early, and then it just ends up on the shelf, and then you never fucking get that shit again. And it's like, it's a weird place to be. I got off on a tirade on that, but
no. Right there with you. Yeah.
But it's weird because you know what, I was saying it to the writer the other day. Because he's been busting his ass for a year writing the script, and he's been killing it and doing a great job and doing draft after draft and returning them on ahead of time on deadlines and impressing the shit out of these people. And he's like relay race part 1. And I'm like, I feel like I'm fucking standing here waiting for you to hand me the goddamn baton. Because I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. You know, put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. Here we go. You know, and that's directing. It's like a year of that. It's a year of sitting around going like, "Are we ready? Why are we not going? What's happening?
Hurry up and wait, baby."
Yeah. And then how do you fill your time? I mean, I fill my time by doing podcasts and smaller projects, but you know,
and being interested in all things. But yeah, for the most part, it's like, all right, what's next? What do we do next? How are we going to do it? Yeah.
How do I keep swimming?
Yeah, exactly. And how do I keep engaged and activated, and how does this keep moving and stuff? Yeah. It's definitely, for me, as somebody is used to the speed of like food, getting used to this like year-long meal or 2-year-long meal. It's like, fuck this. It's just, it's a lot to take in and try to process and to try to get used to and to be okay with it. Yeah, a lot of it has to be based on like your ability to have faith in what it is that you're making and just being okay with that, really, you know. So it's a process. And I'm learning now too. I don't know if you've got here. You probably have. I'm learning now that I've been so fucking obsessed with filmmaking. Like every waking hour for me has been like, I just had this really interesting exchange with somebody. How would I shoot that? Or, I read this thing and, oh, wow, that'd be really cool. And I feel like I'm always cataloging stuff and putting things aside. And I've been so fucking obsessed with it. And then, 18 years later, I'm like this bound up ball of just stress from that whole process. And someone asked me, they're like, what's your hobby? And I'm like, well, I guess my hobby's like drawing. And they go, nah, that's work. That's storyboarding. That's still your thing. And I'm like, I guess my hobby is, I like to watching movies. That's not it either. And I'm like, fuck. I need to find it. You're all inbred.
Yeah, man.
Did you find one? Did you find a hobby?
I don't know. I'm still hunting, man. I'm playing around with a couple of ideas, and I'm looking for something that maybe a little bit of physical activity, but also just something that just, I want that. Once again, here I am thinking about filmmaking. I want that ability for it to just completely put me in a whole other mindset so that I can reprocess what it is that I'm fucking stressing out about.
I got one.
Oh yeah? What do you got?
I do martial arts. I do jujitsu. That's like a game changer for me. It's been a game changer for me because this has really helped me see just a different perspective. And you can't, like, you're going there and you're trying to kill another person and they're trying to kill you. So you can't be thinking about your film or the shot or something. So you have to do a complete disconnection mentally and physically. And then you come right back to it. So it's kind of cool. It's very it's very challenging. I train with like really gnarly guys that compete around the world. So, and I'm only able to go like twice or three times a week, and these guys go like every day and they're just savages. So that really sucks. It's like I'm going to play jujitsu with David Fincher and shit, So I'm like, this is great. I'm in, like I said, I think this is a great time because I'm right in the wheel of pain and I'm right in the center of the wheel of pain. I'm just like, fuck, like, and I go through phases, It's like when I first started to take on CGI and like really focus on that, like the first like 2-3 years of CGI, and I'm still going through the painful process of it, but it's just like, fuck, like this is a rough fucking road. Like it sucks, you know, but at the same time, it's like, I think if I didn't have that feeling, I wouldn't like it, you know? So it's just there's a weird kind of, part of that, but that's been my release. If you can find something like that, and especially if it's physical, it's great, because oftentimes we end up sitting a lot more than we should.
Very true.
And it's good to get away from it. So you can kind of go do it. My problem is this, like, fuck, sometimes I'm just in the zone of creating and like, I just don't want to go, but I always have to go because I know like how important it is to do it. So and when I'm there, I'm like, oh fuck, I'm glad I came to it. Or I'm like, fuck, I fucking hate this. So yeah, you get my ass handed to me by everybody, but then I can go and do the same. Like, and then I could just manhandle somebody. Like, okay, cool. Like I can dismantle you physically without a problem. You know, it's like, it feels good. So I'm waiting for somebody to fuck with me in the real world, so I could test these babies out. But no, I haven't had an opportunity yet. Probably haven't. Sound like I have anger issues, or probably do. So. I don't give a fuck.
I've got a couple friends of mine. My buddy Jarvis, who's a great DP, actually does it. I think he just got black belt, if that's a thing. I think that is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
That's the highest rank you could get in martial arts. So
yeah,
then you go to like red stripe and all that kind of stuff too. So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
And what kind of martial art does he train?
I think it's jujitsu. I think that's what he does.
Cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
For sure.
You should talk to him about it then. Yeah. You should go and get your ass handed to you. It's fun. It's totally humbling. You got like, I'm the shit, I'm the director. And you go on the mats and you're like, you're nothing. You're just a piece of meat. You have a little somebody come up and just whoop on your ass, you know? So yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I equate it to like chess with your body, really. It's like body chess. So, and if you're big on thinking, which I think you are, it's like really cool because you're just deciphering and understanding mechanisms and pivot points and like weight shifting and like there is an answer to all of it, which is really cool. It's not like boxing where you're just punching each other in the head, and there's definitely a science to boxing, but it's far more damaging, I think, to your brain.
Yeah.
Where jiu-jitsu, you can train really hard for like 4 hours and you're just tired, really. As long as you're not like roughhousing it super hard with somebody and they're not being nice with you, then you can do it for a long period of time and be completely fine, because you just tap when you get to a certain position. You're like, hey, I tap, you won, you know? Right. So it has a cool longevity to it. And I think, it's so rad. Like it's one of those, I kind of equate it to like skateboarding before skateboarding was really huge. I think it's getting bigger, but like back in the day, kids would just like, put together and make their own kind of skateboards and stuff and then go skate like the pools and stuff, Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where it is now. And it's starting to get more world acclaim. Guys like Joe Rogan and stuff I train in the same system as him. Like his best friend, Eddie Bravo, created a system called 10 Planet System. And it's like it's different from the modern or from the traditional style. It's like there's no gi involved, and it's like a much more like elaborate, weird clench game, like totally stoner style, like weird abstract art, like expressionistic, flowy kind of shit. So it's a lot of fun. It fits who I am and my type of style in life in general. So yeah.
Well, I'm very envious, man. It sounds like you have a really great hobby.
I'm very thankful for it. And I love all my training partners. And it's like one of those things I just, I can't imagine my life without. And I'm really going to get sad when I get too old to not be able to do it. But soaking it up now while I can. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. But I think it really helps the art form. I think it helps me as a person. A lot of times too, like I'm sure you've experienced this too, is being online and sharing your work. And then, there's the keyboard justice warriors and stuff, and they'll go talk a bunch of shit.
Of course.
And then you're just like, well, it's, you go to jujitsu and then like, you can't do that. You realize that there's a real world and then there's a false world, and the false world exists on Twitter, because all the sad people are on Twitter and there's sad opinions and there's soapboxes and they're all experts on everything. So I'm just talking shit, but I'm being truthful.
Well, there's a bit of, there's truth behind that, man. And this is something that I've been experiencing lately. It's as just a director or as a boss. As an owner of a production company and working with younger crews, there's a whole generation that is really afraid of like actual physical contact and like
weird,
like real in the room sort of verbal shit. Like, I always get annoyed with new PAs that I work with, and I'm like, will you just call the fucking person? Will you not text them? Will you just get them on the fucking phone? And it's because if you have somebody and they hear your voice and you hear their voice, they're held accountable for what it is that they're saying. But then you can also read things. You can read into how they're feeling and what their intentions are, and then you can adjust on the fly your interactions with them. I mean, that's directing, is actually hearing what your ideas, how your ideas bounce off of the person that you're giving them to. And you can't be precious little people with it. Like when you text, when you see someone texting, you can see them editing the fucking thing. And going through this process of making it the most perfect fucking text. And then to have a conversation that you and I right now would have in about 3 minutes takes about 25 fucking minutes because
it drives me nuts.
Both ends are editing their shit. And then when you're done with that whole text conversation, you're like, what the fuck was the outcome? Like, what is the answer to this? Like, there is no solid answer. And I always say to young people that are getting into directing, I go, talk to people, practice the art of fucking talking and practice the art of fucking listening to people, because that is the most important part. Because you can, as a director, you're basically shaping all that stuff, and you're shaping conversations and you're shaping interactions. And that's what you're hired to do, is to convince people to work with you and convince a crew to stay over late for 4 fucking hours and get into like, the 17th hour. You know what I mean? Like it's part of your job, man. So you can't do that it's not like you can text everybody on the fucking crew, because they'd all say no. They'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah, man. It's definitely, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting process that I've kind of, I don't know. I've been just, like I said, I think it's all an enigma too. It's like these are things like this. It's like just weird things like text messaging, for example, or communicating. But yeah, I mean, totally. I've realized through the years that directing is primarily just a communication art form, and it's all about like how well you communicate and how well you can manipulate, basically, in a good way or a bad way. I mean, there's some directors I've worked with that are incredibly, really good at manipulating everybody to do what they want, and they manage to get their will and their way, and that's. Hey, I'm not going to say anything. That's their thing, So, this is part of the whole practice of it all. But, I mean, it's just a communication art. It's like how good you are at, pulling out the best in others,
Yep.
And, I mean, you could say it's like a coach is for a football team or a sport team. They're doing a very similar thing. They're trying to dictate the odds and go against the odds of nature and try to win, and they're communicating it, and they can't do it alone. So they do it amongst other people, and that communal aspect creates these like random tangents. But like, imagine if football or any of these sports was done via text, it's like, that would be really horrible.
Yeah,
so that
totally.
You're right. I mean, it's a hands-on thing, and I think it's so important. It's a very much a people thing. Like my next short, as like I'm my main lead, his name's Nate. He's one of my best friends. I call him Nate Gyllenhaal. It's not his name. That's our on-set joke, because we're big Jake Gyllenhaal fans. So I'm like, come here, Nate Gyllenhaal. Like, we're just like, kind of always joking, but no, he's like, he's always down. Like, I can call him, dude, I need you to come up. Can you come up? We gotta go shoot. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So I'm like, you're the best, Nate Gyllenhaal. That's a good fucking friend, dude. That's a good fucking friend. And someone that'll ride or die, baby. Yeah, man, you need those guys, and you only have a couple in your life. You got to hold on to them. Yeah, and then when you make it, or if you finish something, I always love to give them the fucking spotlight, because it's like, dude, you have bent over. My brother has been in almost everything that I've done, and I always cast him in a small part. And then he is in the behind the scenes doing fucking props work. He's always busting his ass and building things for me and doing shit. And I couldn't make movies without him. I couldn't make movies
without those folks that stick around for the long haul. And when you give that phone call and that random fucking phone call and you're all excited going, I got this idea. And they go, yeah, I'm in. You're like, fuck. All right, dude.
I love you guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the best.
And those
you
are
go out and do it.
Yeah. And those are the guys that, I can't wait to do a big fucking movie because I'm just going to be like, can you fly him out, please? And put him in a hotel. And like, I'm making a big fucking deal because he's got 18 years of time into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like this is a really, I mean, I saw that with, I was really fortunate years ago to be invited on to one of the Farley Brothers sets. And they were, I don't know if it was like Three Stooges or one of the others. And they were shooting in Atlanta. And those guys, they actually fly in their high school buddies for every film. And
that's so cool.
And I ended up on an airplane with these guys and I recognized them. And I thought they were actors because I had seen them in like, Kingpin, and I had seen them in Dumb and Dumber as extras, and I'm like, wow, okay. And they're just the dudes that they went to high school with. And every movie they do, they make such a big ordeal of flying these guys out and having them come out and be a part of this movie. And it was so fucking inspiring. And those
That's awesome.
Dude, their sets are so great, man. Those guys have
They're doing it right.
They have such a wonderful collaborative set, and the people are all fucking happy to be there. It's just it's so wonderful. And you hear that, you hear that about Adam Sandler's movies, like love it or hate it. I mean, that guy's basically making movies so that he can employ all his pals, And,
that's, And a lot of filmmakers are doing that too. It's like, that makes total sense.
But that's, I mean, at its core, that's being in love with the whole process. It's actually,
that's right. It's a great perspective.
Yeah, man. It's like, having the money, having the loot to be able to do this and to play with your pals and,
so much of it you want to be able to control. I mean, like, again, I keep bringing up Fincher, but so many other directors do the same thing because they hire their friends because they know they can rely on them.
Yep.
When you go out and hire a random stranger, you never know. And you can either get like a great thing or you can get a really dud. And it's so difficult, especially when you have to, like, when X and Y need to X equal W and it doesn't, you're fucked. And if it doesn't because you took a risk on a stranger, you're just like, why did I do that? So being able to go like, hey, we have history, you're my pal, like I know you. And the cool thing about my buddy Nate is like, he just says like, my goal is to make it so that your film's great. That's all I care about. So I don't want to be the cause of your film not being great. So I'm like, oh well, thanks. Yeah. If I hire an actor, they might be, of course, a better actor because they're trained, hopefully, in being an actor in comparison to Nate, which we talked about. But then they could totally be a total shit person and horrible to deal with. And I'm like, well, fuck, like, yeah. So it's just, I think it's a matter of just like working within what you have. That's one of the things that I'm trying to do right now too, is like, okay, I have limited time. I mean, it's just me shooting. I have Nate whenever I can get him up here, which is as much as I can. Mm-hmm. And then just like, putting that all together. But I know all the other things, like I understand how to operate the camera. I'm learning DaVinci Resolve right now. I know how to cut, I know how to edit, I know how to do that stuff. Another thing I need to learn is like sound design, because so much of horror is sound design. Like I'd say like 80% of it is the sound design.
Big time.
Which is so scary to me because I haven't done that yet. So I'm like, fuck. But I'm excited for that too, because it's just a whole nother enterprise of experience too. So,
dude, sound design, we can get nerdy on sound design. Sound design is the fucking coolest, man. I love it, dude. And when I do my cuts for horror, I'm actually sound designing as I edit, because it's virtually impossible to figure out your pacing without sound design. Because it's
true. Because you're like, what the fuck? Right. You can't go off the visuals really. You can try to do the beats, but oftentimes you end up with this weird nebulous cut that has no rhythm. Exactly.
Yeah.
And since you came from music videos, a lot of the stuff that I've cut and made, it comes from the pulse of music. It's so much about the tempo and the pulse of where things hit. And I mean, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. I don't really care. It's just the way I like to work. But I hit that shit hard when I want to hit it, and I just drop it right when it needs to be, and then I kick it to the beat. But that's because I used to play music. I played bass for like 8 years growing up, and like I would just play like a lot of Tool and shit. And so I'm very familiar with like that kind of music and that rhythm and tone and keeping that rhythm and that offbeat and stuff. So it's in my blood when I go and edit and stuff, in my mind, so it's all kind of somewhat connected. So.
Oh, sure, dude. There's a pulse and a beat behind the pacing of every fucking scene, man. Like
important.
When I cut 12 km, I mean, I shot that movie in Russian. I don't speak Russian, you know, and so that was a big
It
fucking
came from
thing.
a nightmare you had or something like that. Like when you had your head injury or something.
Oh yeah. We can get into that, but I shot this movie in Russian because I was financing it, and I was like, fuck it, let's just shoot it in Russian because it feels more real to me. And part of me was also like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get really great actors. So if they're speaking in another language, maybe the audience will excuse it a bit more. Turns out I got fucking great actors, but
yeah, they were really great.
Thanks, man.
That's awesome.
And then when we shot,
so much of it is that you're fucked if you don't get it.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude. Yeah. And when we were shooting it, I had a bunch of translators on set, and I would hear these guys rehearse these lines in another language. And in the first couple of times that I was in rehearsals, I sort of had a panic attack, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck they're saying. You know what I mean? And so I would sit over the shoulder of the translator, and she would try to guide me through the script to where it was happening. And I finally just sort of gave into it, and I went, okay, wait. I need two translators. Make sure they say what they're going to fucking say. And every time we finish, I'm going to ask you what they said. Great. But I'm just going to focus on their rhythms. And it became this really interesting exercise in body language, posturing. And then I really started to hyper focus on like who has control at what point in the scene, who's standing, who's sitting, how is his body position, where is it, where are they at? And then rhythm with how they spoke. And then when I got into the edit room, I didn't have it translated first. I just got into the other room. I found a wide shot, and I would listen to the wide shot, and I would just listen to the rhythm of it. And then I cut them. I cut all the scenes without the translation, and I was only off. I was off twice on the whole piece. And it's funny how it comes down to speech patterns. And I haven't learned Russian. I haven't learned anything in the back end of it.
Interesting.
But it was like doing a fucking silent movie. It was really cool, man. It was a really cool. I thought it was going to be super scary, but it ended up.
Sounds like it is.
Yeah, to a certain extent. But it ended up being like this real hyper focus on the actual craft of visual storytelling, which I completely want to keep championing film as a visual medium, man. I think it gets too dialogue heavy these days, too script heavy. And
I can't stand it when it's just super wordy. It drives me fucking bonkers. Dude. I mean, I really appreciate certain films that even like, I get it because like Inception wouldn't have been made without all the extras, you know, like explaining the world and everything. But
sure,
it drives me nuts. It makes it almost unwatchable now when I watch it. I'm just like, fuck, dude, like explaining everything at all times. It's like, why can't you just let me just be in that weird world and experience it and involve it myself? But I get it. You know, it's like they have to make it for, you know, the masses. And I think that's fine, you know? So
sure.
Again, I completely admire them for what they've done. I can't take anything away from it. And I don't want to sound like I think I'm better at it anyway, because I'm not. But I'm just saying, like a lot of films, they're just so script heavy. And I think so much of cinema, I mean, like even for Lost Boy, for example, is going to be like nothing, like really minimal, complete pure cinema, like Nature Channel, you know, like just you're watching and experiencing it. So much of the films I enjoy, like Kiyoshi or Samsara Baraka, all these different types of films, like they're like a more or less an experiential film. But I do appreciate a really great script. You know, you watch like Social Network has a very witty, very smart, very well executed script.
I think and
you feel it, you know, so.
Yeah. It's an important, essential part of the foundation of a movie is having a good script, or if not a good script, then really good concept boards and shot lists and everything, like George Miller on Mad Max. You know what I mean? Like that is the other end of it. You have to have that in play because a good script informs the actors, a good script informs the tone of the piece, a good script informs the crew, it informs everything. So it's essential. It's an important ingredient for the whole thing. But I feel like, I don't know if it was the advent of like Netflix binging and long running series where it just, there isn't enough money for people to do a lot visually. So then you start getting into shows where it's like, all right, we need to, we can only afford 3 locations. So we got to write like, 15 minutes worth of dialogue in this fucking warehouse. You know what I mean? And we'll cross cut that fucking warehouse in order to save some loot. Or like, there's some zombies over the fucking hill here. We have this one location. So let's stage like 2 or 3 conversations while they're doing shit here. And you're like, fuck, it's a lot of wordy shit.
Yeah. You're just cutting just shit tons of dialogue. I mean, Anthony right now, he sends me off like just like examples or parts of his film, and it's like when he cuts it down to the core essence, it's like, it just breathes so much more, and you feel rather than being told. And I think oftentimes with this art form, and it could be completely just my own take, but I enjoy films that allow you to feel rather than being told all the time. A nice blend is great, a great film that can do the both of them, I think is really the key. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but you're so right, 100% right. I think a script, just like a visual, will really guide the tone and the meaning and why you're here. Because one thing I think for filmmakers or people that are just getting into film is you don't shoot films linearly. You go all over the place based on whatever you have in production budget and timing and all that stuff. So you're not going, okay, well, we start off here and we go there. It's like and so that's a real big problem for creating, because you're not going from one line to the next. And so there's a lot of randomness that happens in the interim and throughout that process. But that's why most films are actually really made in the edit room, because you just kind of take everything you have, and a great editor will really understand how to, make gold out of, I don't know, copper, I guess. Dude, that's a good analogy. So
dude, every time, man, every time I like when people are like, that director's a fucking genius. I'm like, come on, that's a myth. Yeah. That's a fucking myth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, nobody's really a genius if you think about it, or just like people are just following. I mean, if you look at the main word, I guess it's like genius is more or less like, I think if you break it down, it was like something of like their genesis, they're doing what they're born to be doing, if a sense. And so almost everybody is doing that, if you think about that. So if everybody's a genius, nobody is. And then I think, it's so funny how people give directors all this credit, and it's true. Maybe they did, but at the same time, like, when you go and watch a film, at the end of it, it's all those people. It's almost like, it's a bad analogy, I understand, and it's probably people who don't like it, but like you think about Hitler, like think about how many people Hitler physically killed himself in comparison to the people that followed him and did his bidding. It's a completely different spectrum of numbers there. So, and there, the good things, there's other good things. Obviously, I'm just thinking of a negative thing, but I mean, it's just, there's so many pieces and people involved in these processes and things and stuff. And oftentimes I'll find like, oh, wow, I'll do a little bit of research and go like, when I started understanding like really what a DOP is and understanding what kind of DOPs I appreciate and admire, and then what films they did, and go like, wow, that's really cool. They carried that style to that one. That was a bad film, but that looked really great, so, or whatever. And it's kind of cool to see the different and follow the different paths throughout the different, films, and seeing the creative influence that one person can have over the other. So I feel like oftentimes like the photography is getting so damn good, and people are so well versed in it that that's no longer the problem anymore. And now I think the next big evolution, the problem is just like content and good writing, really. and that with anything, because there's amazing actors out there. It's just mainly it's the stories and the creative nature of making authentic new stories, rather than Terminator 12 or like, whatever, like maybe that we need that. I don't know, like whatever, like,
yeah, but if you're going to do Terminator 12, do Terminator 12, but do it wild. Like,
Tim Miller's doing the next one. He's a friend of mine, so I think he's going to do his own thing.
Oh, fucking cool, man. That's cool. Yeah. That's rad, man.
He'll have his own approach, I think, which I think that's just part of his nature too. I think because he really is kind of similar to us, where he's slowly gained his way up the food chain. So, and I think he understands how things work, and he's just like really earned every step of the way. So I think so. Yeah.
It's cool, man. He seems like a really rad dude.
He's great to work with. Yeah.
Awesome. That's super cool. Well,
we worked on a cool project together. It was fun. I can't talk about it, but it's a fucking massive one. So yeah, and it was a massive task. And I was like, wow, thanks for letting me try to do this. This is insane. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to share it or talk about it. So, but that'd be really cool the day I get to. So yeah, filmmaking. Yeah.
Well, let me wrap this up because we've been gabbing for almost an hour and a half at this point. So
yeah, man.
It's been really good talking to you, brother. And it's really nice to hear a voice behind this wonderful art that I've been looking at for quite some time. And
thank you.
I've learned a lot talking to you, and it's nice to find a bit of a comrade as we sort of go through a lot of the same shit, man. So I really appreciate you being on the show, and hopefully someday we'll end up being able to work together on something. And then until then, thanks. Is there anything you want to plug? Is there anything you want to put together for the end?
Plug. Thank you everybody for being here, and for everybody who's just supporting, and thank you first and foremost, and I think the main thing is, like, hopefully I wasn't being too negative or jaded. I hope the idea is that we all just, if you're looking at my work or whatever, and you're like, what the hell, or you feel like you're far away from it, it's like I feel the same way when I look at others' art too. So I think it's a universal thing, and I think the key is just to follow your bliss and to do the work that you feel most passionate about, and tell the story that you feel passionate about, and contribute back to the community of art by creating your own authentic voice and being unique to that. And I think that's really, for me, the key here, and that's what I'm trying to do. It's a challenge. So yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Ash as much as I did. Turns out he is a really cool dude in real life. We talked a bit offline, and some of the stuff that he's working on is super cool, man. So I wanted to take a minute to thank our sponsors. First sponsor up is our boys at Puget Systems. If you are in the business for an edit system right now, if you're out looking for a new edit system and you don't want to pay Apple prices, PC is the way to go. And actually, PC is stronger and faster and less expensive. Check out the guys over at PugetSystems.com. These guys build you custom PCs that are amazing. Like, I have 2 4K systems at McFarlane & Pesci that I've cut the past 2 films on. I know Ian just cut his movie on, and we do most of our commercials and stuff. And they're fantastic. And you don't just have to be in the business or in the market for an edit machine. You can also be a sound engineer. You could be a CAD drawer. Whatever works for you. You actually just go to the website and you can choose the software that you use, and they will suggest hardware to go with it. So I can't say enough of good things about these guys. They support me. I love them. Go to PugetSystems.com. Also, my company, McFarlane & Pesci. Go to McFarlaneandPesci.com to check out all the new stuff that both me and Ian McFarlane are working on. Ian is touring around with his film, The Godfathers of Hardcore, which hopefully we'll have some big news on soon. And you'll be able to see the music videos, you'll be able to see the commercials and the stuff that I often reference on the show. So go to McFarlaneandPesci.com. Also, I've been doing, if you follow me, please do follow me on Instagram at Mike Pecci, or this podcast, it's at inlovewiththeprocess pod, POD. And you'll be able to see a bunch of behind the scenes photos. You'll be able to see shots from our sets. But it's also a great place to ask me questions. And I'm a bit distracted here because I'm trying to pull up one of the recent questions that I promised to answer on this episode. All right, so I have a question here from a user. It's Zine BK. I think is how you say it. It's so fucking hard verbalizing Instagram names. It says, "Hello, Mr. Pecci. Hope you're having a great day. I just wanted to ask you about what you do for film directing, as I saw in your biography, you're a film director. I am into filmmaking, producing, and directing. As I have just graduated, I want to go to an academy or school of fine arts in general, so I can study producing and filmmaking. I would love some advice about this in general." Okay, so it looks like he graduated from high school. How do I start? and I am writing some scripts. How do I share them? How do I get into the film industry? Okay. So the best thing to do is decide what it is. Do you want to be a director? Do you want to be a screenplay writer? If you want to be a screenplay writer, then you should definitely take some classes on that. You should definitely take creative writing courses. You should definitely learn the rituals that you were going to need to stay creative and to stay going. Like a big part about being a really great screenplay writer is being able to write on time. It's having the ability to make your deadlines. It's having the ability to sit in a room and come up with creative ideas on the fly. So if you are into it to be a screenplay writer, then I totally suggest that you take some courses for creative screenplays, but also, take some creative speaking classes and learn how to communicate, because that's really going to come in handy when you're pitching and you're communicating with a director or you're communicating with producers. If you're looking to become a film director or a filmmaker in general, I always shy away from saying, hey, go to one of those big fancy schools that you're going to have a huge student loan chasing you, because when you get out of that school, you're not going to get paid right away, and you're potentially not going to get paid for years, and you're going to be expected to work for free in turn, and then you're going to be expected to work for cheap, and then if you have a huge student loans breathing down your neck, it's gonna kind of kill you. You're gonna have to start getting a part-time job. You're gonna have to start distracting from filmmaking. One of the best ways to learn now, the best film schools are out on DVD. You can listen to directors' commentaries. YouTube, love it or hate it, has so many great lessons for you, like whether or not you want to use a camera, whether or not you're figuring out how to edit. Everything can be learned. You're listening to this fucking podcast, for God's sake. So the internet can be a great school for technique and for learning how to use the tools of the trade. But I would highly suggest that if you live in a city that has any sort of film industry or TV industry or any sort of entertainment industry, job that you can actually walk on set and learn, do it. Once you hit 18, you can be a PA. You don't need a college degree to be a PA. And if you're a PA on the right jobs, you'll learn a hell of a lot about it. And more importantly, you'll learn what jobs you want to pursue. From the outside, directing sounds like the best job in the world. And then you may just get in there and go, I don't like it. I actually like sound engineering. When I started out and I was PAing or just working on sets, I would hang out with all the different departments and ask questions and put on headphones and, learn about the truck, learn about packing trucks, learning about lighting, learning about how many guys it actually takes to lift certain things. And all these elements become really important for you when you become a director. And these are the things that they don't teach you in class. Filmmaking theory is important. Story theory is important. But you can take those as individual classes. Like if you find a community college that teaches that stuff, and it's kind of the same fucking shit everywhere, go do that, save money and go take a cheap course and then go to work, learn early and see if you like it. I think that answers your question. I'm sure your parents will hate the fact that I'm not telling you to go to fucking college, but and I'm not dogging on it. I just be smart about it. Understand that at some point, student loans don't just disappear. Understand that at some point you got to pay back student loans, and sort of get an idea of how much money you're are you going to be able to fucking pay him back, dude? Next time I have Dave, my assistant, on the show, I'll have him talk about it again. He's just graduated from school now, so he's in that boat that you will potentially be in 4 years. So that's it, man. So like I said, follow me on Instagram at Mike Pecci or In Love with the Process Pod. And leave me some questions, because I will answer them. I will embarrass you in front of everybody. And thanks for listening, guys. I really appreciate it. And please follow me. It makes a lot of difference. It helps the sponsors. It helps me stay alive. So thanks a lot, guys. Bye.